In Commander, card draw is probably the most important thing. The more cards you can see in a game, the better your deck can function. All those cards are put in there for a reason, so of course you would want to draw those cards. This is pretty basic stuff, and we all kind of know this. So how can we draw these cards in an effective way? Well, in a game mode such as Commander, some easy ways to do this is by having a draw outlet in your command zone. It's a way to have guaranteed card draw every single game and helps you get ahead and run your deck smoother almost every single time. Having card draw in the command zone adds a lot of consistency to your gameplay. And on top of the fact that we're trying to keep things simple, there's really only one commander that comes to mind: simple gameplay and card draw. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Edric, Spymaster of Trest. Today we'll be talking about Edric, Spymaster of Trest as a commander, 3 different ways to build Edric, and your typical game plans that you might play with each of these decks. Edric is a super fun commander that I love playing at all different power levels. His game plan is very simple, and he does it very effectively. If you're looking for a simple yet very powerful deck, you've come to the right place. This is Edric, Spymaster of Trest. I wanted to give a quick note before we actually start talking about Edric as a commander. Edric is typically used as an extra turn deck, and I know that in some casual pods, if not most casual pods, extra turns is kind of looked down upon. This is my preferred strategy with Edric, and it's a big part of the video that I'm talking about, but if you don't want to play him as an extra turn deck, that's okay. The last deck that I talk about is more of a group hug strategy that is still pretty straightforward and simple. So if you want to watch that instead, go watch this point in the video. For those of you who do want extra turns, here we go. So we can build Edric in 3 different ways, but I want to focus on the history of Edric before we do anything. Edric has had time in the EDH spotlight, as well as just being a very powerful and strong commander to play. When you have a cheap effect in the colors of green and blue that helps you draw cards consistently through combat damage, it brews up a very effective strategy for a deck to follow. You want to be hitting your opponents, drawing cards, playing more cards to hit your opponents more. Combine that with some maybe overrun effects, as well as some extra turns, and you can just do this gameplay loop over and over and over again. Again, Edric has seen some spotlight in CEDH, but has slowly been kind of outpaced in terms of other decks. However, you can definitely see him be used as like a rogue deck in this kind of power level. Edric can also be used in lower power decks. But right now we're going to cover kind of the middle ground of what Edric can really be. And we're going to play him as a high power, tempo, extra turns deck. What does this mean? It means that we're going to try to play on a very strict mana curve, having turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, and turn 4 options, swinging out with those creatures to draw through our deck, and hopefully starting on turn 5, we can cast an extra turn spell. This will then start the loop of casting an extra turn, hitting your opponents, playing more creatures, casting another extra turn, until your opponents are dead through combat damage. It's a very simple gameplay loop that we love to do, and is quite effective because of the amount of extra turn spells we're able to run. Again, this is a high-powered deck. It's looking to follow this mana curve strictly. It has tons of protection and counter spells to help further our game plan and guarantee that we're able to cast our spells. And it's got enough ramp to ensure that we hit those extra turn spells. This deck is very good, it's very efficient, and is extremely effective at what it wants to do. We run 10 different extra turn spells, the cheapest being Time Warp and Temporal Manipulation. Those are going to be your most expensive cards due to the fact that they're only 5 mana. And then we also have a Nexus of Fate, which can go infinite. It's very rare that you're going to get to 0 cards, but in case something goes terribly wrong and you only have 1 card in your deck, you can cast Nexus of Fate an infinite number of times because you will draw the card, you'll play the card, you'll go back into your library, and you'll draw it again. It's very rare that it will happen, but maybe you're against a mill deck and you need to play this. We have plenty of ways to get back any of the cards that we do use. We have cards like Regrowth, Noxious Revival, Reclaim. These cards help us get back our extra turn spells so that we can at least loop it a couple more times. We also have plenty of tutors that can help get us out the creatures that we need to either end the game with or get some more extra turn spells that we can then start looping with. We then have a suite of plenty of unblockable creatures. This is the best way that we can guarantee we're drawing plenty of cards every single turn. If we're not drawing cards, we're not progressing our game plan, which means we're not going to win. So we need plenty of draw spells that can help us get there. This deck is very effective, and with its effectiveness and power level, it's actually pretty cheap. But how can we get even faster? Well, we can bump it up even more. This is CEDH Edric, full power. For CEDH Edric, we still have the same amount of extra turn spells, but we up the level of our interaction, we up the level of our ramp, and we just add more effective cards. We still have plenty of small 1-drop creatures and 2-drop creatures that are unblockable. Now we're just able to up the card quality with things like Ledger Shredder, Sylvan Safekeeper, and Snapcaster Mage that allows us to play the extra turn spells even more. And we add a tutor in Green Sun Zenith. Our blue interaction is much more effective at what it needs to do with counterspells like Force of Will, Fierce Guardianship, and Force of Negation. And then we have greater removal like Cyclonic Rift and March of Swirling Mist. The land base is of course upgraded, guaranteeing that we get the land drops that we need and having the best untapped lands we can possibly have. And then we just have a bit better mana rocks, and we're not worried too much about the mana dorks anymore. We still run mana dorks, of course, but they're not as important. One include you absolutely should not have in an Edric deck is a mana crypt. When you're taking so many extra turns, you don't want to die to your own effect. Overall, CEDH versus the high power version of Edric is just faster ways of getting mana and higher card quality for both interaction, tutors, and removal. Other than that, the deck plays exactly the same. Turn 1, you want to be casting an unblockable creature or a mana dork. Turn 2, you want to cast another unblockable creature and or another mana dork. Turn 3, you cast Edric, you draw a bunch of cards. Turn 4, because you have a better ramp package and because you have better ramp creatures, hopefully on turn 4, you're able to cast your first extra turn spell. Once you cast your first extra turn spell, in most cases, you're going to get the game and you're going to win the game. However, look at the table around you and see what other people are playing. You might not want to force a win first. You might actually want to act as a bit of table police. Because you have great interaction, you might want to try stopping people from getting their win so that you can then win on the crackback. You can play a little bit of table police as you wait for your opponents to also use their interaction. Then once you know the coast is clear, you have plenty of unblockable creatures and you have plenty of card draw sources where you can start playing your extra turns. It all just depends on the table, how aggressive you go, and how more mid-range you go. CEDH Edric is definitely a harder deck to play as, like I said earlier, CEDH decks have become a lot more tuned, a lot more optimized, and just a lot better at what they do as more cards have come out. Edric's game plan has kind of stayed the same for as long as he's been in CEDH. But let's say you don't want to play CEDH and you don't want to spend all this money on these extra turn spells or this interaction suite. How else can we play Edric that's maybe a bit more fun, maybe just as simple, and still could be pretty effective at winning the game? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I have just the answer for you. This is Edric Group Hug. So one thing we might have not mentioned about Edric, whenever a creature deals combat damage to one of your opponents, its controller may draw a card. This is a great political tool as it means that your opponents can also draw cards by not attacking you. So what does this mean? Well, in this version of Edric, we try to play a lot of group hug effects that help our opponents draw cards, get more mana, and just overall be able to play their game plan easier. We then try our best to force them to swing at other people and try to politic our way for them getting through their deck. We also still have plenty of unblockable creatures that we run. We actually run even more this time because we want to be drawing a bunch of cards too. But this time we have a couple payoffs for drawing these cards. We have Psychosis Crawler as damage, we have Triskaidekaphile that can help us win the game, and we have a couple of overrun effects that are going to allow us to run over our opponents if we truly need to. We only run 2 as we're going to be drawing through most of our deck. Don't be surprised if you're able to draw through 50 cards in one game with this game plan. We have plenty of draw effects, and we have plenty of creatures that can help us draw. On top of the fact of our group hug cards are going to help us draw that many more cards. It's really a fun time. Everyone gets access to their deck, and in many cases, people might actually start overdrawing. And when people start overdrawing, it means that you're able to force them to discard maybe some of their valuable cards. It's really kind of a fun time. Now, the biggest conclusion that we can take from Edric is that he's simple and effective. Just like I like to preach how simple decks allow us to focus on other parts of the game, Edric embodies that fully. Edric doesn't need anything but himself to do well, and his play patterns are pretty simple. Untap, upkeep, draw, play your land for turn, tap it to cast a very cheap creature, swing out with those creatures, draw a couple cards, and play some more spells. Repeat that over and over and over again until you can find a winning board state. It's a really fun gameplay loop. Just because it's simple and repetitive doesn't mean it's not fun. Because you're able to see so many cards that you have in your deck just in different orders, you get a huge variety of games played. Your opponents are also able to draw tons of cards which means that they get more variety in their gameplay as well. Edric is a super fun choice if you're looking for a casual, simple, and easy commander to play that can be played at multiple power levels. If you want something higher power, throw in some extra turns. If you're looking for something CEDH, up the card quality, upgrade the land base, and you're pretty much there. And of course, if you'd rather have a more casual experience, take out those extra turn spells and put in some draw payoffs or some group hug effects. Edric is very flexible because of how simple his game plan is. I wonder how creative some other people can be. I've presented these 3 options, but really, Edric could be plenty of things. Edric could be a landfall deck. Edric could be a big cascade deck. Edric could be a 4 or greater power deck. Because of how simple and flexible his design is, Edric truly is a great commander, and I recommend anyone try to play him. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this content, please feel free to subscribe. See you later.